Hi to all. Today we are going to see the concept of generations of computers. Before we start the programming languages and programming in C, you are all in first year, so I just give you an introduction to generations of computers. Okay, because many of the students from biology also, so you need to know the generations of computers, and then we start our programming C. Okay. So generations of computers are based on the size of the computer, the components which are used as hardware. Depending on that, the generations of computers are separated based on the characteristics of various computers developed from time to time. They are categorized as generation of computers. Okay. So the generations of computers are categorized into five types, five generations. First generation, second generation, third, fourth, and fifth generation. These are all the generations of computers. So first generation computers, the time duration is between 1940 to 1956. In the first generation computers, the component used for calculating and storing vacuum tubes are used here. The vacuum tubes are big in size, so the size of the computers are very large at the time, and also it's very costly. A common man couldn't able to buy computers like today because of the cost of the first generation computers is very high compared to now. Okay, so what is a vacuum tube means? Vacuum tube is used for calculation as well as storage and control in the first generation computers as the basic component for memory and circuitry for CPU. CPU means the central processing unit. Okay, this is the structure of the vacuum tubes. In previous exam picture also I shown you that this is the vacuum tube. This is used for storage as well as calculations in first generation computers. So what are the features of the first generation at the time? Or vacuum tubes are used as switches instead of mechanical relays, and then it's very large in size. It occupies several large rooms. Okay, it occupies several large room means the size of the computer, you can think it how big it was. Okay, extremely slow by today's standards. For example, if you take a calculator now, your calculator is much faster than the first generation computer. Okay, prone to frequent failure. Includes the ABC, Mark 1, ENIAC, UNIVAC, and other of similar design. These are all the first generation computers. The ENIAC, UNIVAC, Mark 1, ABC, and all are the first generation computers made with of vacuum tubes, and vacuum tubes are used there. Okay, so this is the picture of the ENIAC, the first generation computer, the first used electronic general purpose computer in 1946. You see how big this computer. If you imagine this size of computers are available now, how can we buy and how can afford this type of large computers to all homes? And it could take it could take many spaces. So these are all the disadvantages of the previous generations of computers. So ENIAC stands for Electronic Numeric Integrator and Computer, and also sometimes a calculator also used for C. It was the first electronic general purpose computer completed in 1946, developed by John Percival Eckert and John W. Merchley. Okay. The first generation computer used vacuum tubes for circuitry and magnetic drums for memory. Okay, the first generation computer used vacuum tubes for circuitry and magnetic drums for memory, and were often enormous, taking up the entire room. They were very expensive. In addition to using a great deal of electricity, generated lot of heat, which was often the cause of malfunctions. Okay, first generation computers relied on machine language, the lowest level programming language understood by computers, to perform operations, and they could only solve one problem at a time. Okay, first generation computer understand only the machine language. The programmer also write programs in machine language only. Okay, the machine language is the combinations of zeros and ones, so it was very tedious one. These are all the disadvantages of the first generation computers. Input was based on punched codes and paper tape, and output was displayed on a printout. So to rectify these disadvantages, the second generation computers were emerged in 1956 to 1963. The second generation computer used transistor instead of vacuum tubes because the size of the vacuum tube is big. They need many number of vacuum tubes for the circuitry purpose, so that the size of the computers were very big. Okay, so to uh, rectify all those things, transistors were replaced by vacuum tubes and used in the second generation computers. One transistor replaced the equivalent of 40 vacuum tubes. Okay, girls, here you can see one transistor. This is the transistor. This one transistor replaced the equivalent of 40 vacuum tubes. So the size of the computer was little bit reduced compared to the first generation computer. Okay, allowing computers to become smaller, faster, cheaper, more efficient, and more reliable. Still generated a great deal of heat that can damage the computer, but also by using these transistors, heat also a great deal of heat that damage the computer. So second generation computers moved from cryptic binary machine language to symbolic assembly level languages. Okay, in first generation computers machine language only used, but in the second generation computers assembly languages are used for programming. So, okay, now second generation computers still relied on punch records for input and printouts for output. Okay. They were also the first computers that stored their instruction in their memory. In second generation computers, is the first computer that stored their instructions in their memory, which moved from the magnetic drum to magnetic core technology. So this is the example of second generation computer. In second generation computers, was used. One transistors replaced 40 vacuum tubes. Okay, the characteristics of the second generation computers are use of transistors, reliable in comparison to first generation computers, smaller size as compared to the first generation computers, and also produce less heat compared to the first generation computers, still very costly, support machine language and assembly level languages. So this is the third generation languages. It's emerged in the year 1964 to 71. The third generation computers use the integrated circuit. The development of integrated circuit was the hallmark of the third generation computer. Transistors were miniatured and placed on silicon chips. Okay, these are all the small transistors are placed on the one in. They are combined into an integrated circuit. Transistors were miniatured and placed on the silicon chips called semiconductors, which drastically increase the speed and efficiency of computers. Okay, this is the third generation computer used integrated circuit, shortly called ICs. Much smaller and cheaper compared to the first and second generation computers. It carries out instruction in billions of seconds. Okay, using interacted with third generation computers through keyboards. Here keyboards are used in the third generation computers only. In the first generation computers and second generation computers, they used punched codes for inputs and output using printouts. Okay, computers for the first time became accessible to a mass audience because they were smaller and cheaper than their predecessor. Okay, after the third generation computers came out, many of the common people also able to affordable these computers for their purpose. So the third generation computers use the integrated circuit, the combinations of transistor, capacitor and resistor. Uh, Third generation computers use the integrated circuit. The development of the integrated circuit was the hallmark of the third generation of computers. Transistors were miniature and placed on silicon chip called semiconductors. Okay, this is the IC, integrated circuit. Okay, this is one is the IC. The feature of the third generation computers or ICs are used more reliable in comparison to previous two generations, smaller size, generated less heat, it's faster compared to the first and second generation computers, lesser maintenance, still but costly, AC needed, consumed lesser electricity, supported high level languages because the past two generations uses the machine language, The first generation used the machine language, second generation uses the both machine and assembly level language. But this third generation computer supported the high level languages also. So the fourth generation computers, the era of fourth generation is 76 to 1909. The fourth generation computer used the microprocessor. This is one of the biggest boom in the computer world. The microprocessor brought the fourth generation of computers as thousands of integrated circuits were built into a single silicon chip. Okay. If you see in transistors, 40 vacuums are replaced by one transistor. Thus, transistors are combined by ICs. These ICs are combined to the called a microprocessor. Okay, all these small computers become more powerful. They could be linked together to form networks also. Today we are using this networking networks. All are based on this fourth generation computer, which eventually led to the development of the internet. Okay. Fourth generation computer also saw the development of graphical user interface, the mouse and handheld devices, keyboard, mouse and other devices, speaker and also included. So fourth generation uses this microprocessor. This is the example of Intel Pentium 4 microprocessor I shown in the picture. The features of the fourth generation computers are very large scale integrated technology, used very cheap, portable and reliable. Use of trees is very small size, so all the people could afford this. Pipeline processing, no AC needed. Concept of internet was introduced. Great developments in the fields of networks. Computers became easily available to all the peoples after the fourth generation computers came out. Next, the fifth generation computers. After 2000, the fifth generation computers emerges. Fifth generation computer very reliable, works faster, easily portable. Different sizes, different features, different affordable prices, extra high processing speed, parallel processing and wireless networks are used. Fifth generation computers are used nowadays, capable of parallel processing, supporting voice recognition, understanding natural languages or in the fifth generation computer. The robots are examples of the fifth generation computers. Here the artificial intelligence are used. By using the artificial intelligence, the robots can act like a human being by the codings. Lots of robots are available in the world today. Sophia is an example of one robot that is used to greet and welcome the guest. And also some robots are used in hotels to provide menus and welcome the gathering and all those things. The robots are used today in Amazon and like Amazon and many other grocery and big companies are used robots for sorting things and providing informations like that. Okay, so these are all the fifth generation computers. I think I more hope you all understand the basics of computers. What are all the generations? Each generations, what the circuits are used, vacuum tubes, ICs, microprocessor, and all the things. Okay, thank you guys.